My name is Kala, Arvind Kala. Cookie Malhotra, our school friend, has vanished into himself. Cookie Malhotra would be around 75, like all of us. So, all of us grew up in the 60s, did school in the 60s in La Martiniere College, Lucknow. Though it was called a college, it was actually a school set up by a French adventurer some 200 years ago, a fellow called Claude Martin. So, and that was, in the 60s, forget a pre-TV age, it was even a pre-transistor age when families used to be stuck to clunky radios, Philips and Murphy, that you could move, big, heavy things. And our only form of entertainment was cycling around, and we would cycle around for hours at a stretch, in the Lucknow cantonment, an empty place. This was almost a pre-car age when cars hadn't become ubiquitous, with even the local dhobi owning a car. That sort of age, etc. And our movies, English movies, used to be those cowboy westerns, which we saw with avidly. Now, that was the age. And in the 60s, this fellow, Cookie Malhotra, he joined one of the IITs, and after he passed out, he found that the US was welcoming engineers from India. So he joined that exodus when thousands of engineers from India went to America and settled, and who are still there. Now, Cookie Malhotra, he was a Sikh, as I said, and he married a Sikh girl who's a pretty woman who's a nurse, and who continues to be a nurse, who's there. And this fellow is here. Now, what happened to him was 3 years ago he disappeared into himself. He lived somewhere near the Jamna, in one of those low-rise, high-rise apartments, four stories or something like that. And he lived in one of the apartments there, and he vanished into himself, meaning he stopped receiving telephone calls. He stopped calling anybody. If anybody knocks on the door, so that is what has happened after decades and decades in the US. And the irony was, this guy was enjoying his time in Delhi very much. He was a merry character. One peculiarity with him was, if I invited him for a party, a school and college guys party, lunch, he would land up at 11 o'clock, and for 1 hour before that he would walk around in a close by park, and then finally he would land up, the first guy to land up. But that was one peculiarity. But otherwise, he was full of life, because he had that rare capacity of immersing himself in that moment. And somehow, when I could see him, because when he moved in here, he's been here for 3-4 years, it looked like he does no desire to go back. He's enjoying India so much after decades and decades of living among whites in Texas. He was probably fed up, and he had the rare capacity of immersing himself in the moment. Like I said, he would walk to Chandni Chowk, which was close by, go to the Gurdwara there, talk to anybody, take pictures of a peacock or anybody, and send it to his friends, etc. He was full of life. He was a buffoon, and it was good fun meeting him. Now, one peculiarity about Cookie Malhotra was his head used to shake. He had a condition, and his head would actually shake like this. Involuntary shake, and it would go on non-stop, and it would stop after he would have wine. So he would have wine at my place, and I actually saw that the head would stop shaking once he started drinking wine. So that was one peculiarity. One peculiarity about it. He was just fine. And now, all of us, people, they just wonder. Now it's around 3 years since he vanished into himself. Everybody knows me, all my school friends, they all know he is still here, unless he has gone back. He's a US citizen unless he got, I don't know. So everything about him is a mystery. Where does he, who cooks his food? We don't know. Does he step out of the home at all? We don't know. Is he in touch with the neighbors? We don't know. Does he do anything? What does he, how does he spend the whole day? Is he ill? Has he recovered? What is his equilibrium? What does he think about? Does he talk to anybody? We just don't know. He reminds me of a sentence that Winston Churchill, the British PM, used on Russia when Russia went communist in 1917 and became inscrutable for the entire world, because nobody knew what happened across the Iron Curtain. That's what the Russia was called. So Winston Churchill called Russia that at that time a riddle inside a mystery wrapped in an enigma. Cookie has become the same to us. Cookie Malhotra, our school friend, has become a riddle inside a mystery wrapped in an enigma for all of us. And all of us, when we wonder, all of us, sometimes we meet for lunch or wherever we meet. Our school friends, chaps with creaking knees and pot bellies that we carbohydrate pot bellies that we try to pull in when we meet one another, just to like that. And so he's become a mystery. People say, "Whoa, what about, have you contacted him?" No, people have now stopped phoning him. And now a guy like me, I would like to visit his home and knock on his door, but suppose he doesn't open the door. That's a long way. Does he take calls from his wife in Texas? We just don't know. Has he gone back? We don't know. His in-laws live in a South Delhi area called Saket. Does he allow them to come in? Has anybody sought police intervention? Let's see if this guy is okay. But would anybody break down his door? We don't know. Everything is an if. Why if? Everything is a blank. It's just, the whole thing has become blank, and he's become it's such a mystery. Gradually, of course, all of us, we are caught up in our own problems. Our wives are ill, or for the wife, the husband is ill, and you just wonder. And gradually, our sick friend from the buffoon who vanished. How many people and how often can you think of anybody? All of us embroiled in our own problems. So it's like that. It's I don't even know what, if there is a psychiatric. I'm quite well read, actually, quite well informed, quite knowledgeable, but I don't know whether there's a condition called this, when a guy just goes incommunicado and just stops meeting everybody for no reason at all and never gives a reason. How can you give? If he has a reason, who's going to hear it? Because he meets nobody. Now the only fellow I've heard of who had a condition like this was an American billionaire called Howard Hughes, who was an extreme, a billionaire, a colorful character, who just disappeared into a room for literally decades, surrounding himself with Kleenex, because he developed all kinds of phobias. And the second case I know of is this Cookie Malhotra. Now, one or two things about him was his parents were in Lucknow, as they owned. They sold off their property after 1984, when Hindu mobs fell on Sikhs and killed and lynched 3,000 of them after Indira Gandhi was assassinated by a Sikh. So they say, so they sold their property in Lucknow and moved to Chandigarh. But they bought this apartment where Cookie Malhotra has vanished into, and there he is. And we just wonder, what's happened, Cookie. And people are fascinated, if somebody disappears. When people seek some excitement, and his speculating about him and talking about him gives some sort of excitement to all of us, the drab lives. So that is So cookie remains a mystery. And now sometimes when I think, or other people think also, will we ever see him again? I doubt it. Is he going to ever change his life? I doubt it. Will he ever emerge from his home? No. Once you get set in your ways, particularly in the condition that he is in. One thing about him, before I forget, is that he's grown up in Texas. One trauma he did would have suffered that a few years ago. His grown-up son, maybe 45, 40, 45, he died of brain cancer, a long-standing brain cancer. Now he had mentioned his son's brain cancer earlier, and for years Cookie Malhotra was fine with that. I mean, you accept whatever life doles out to you, but then it may have been a late trauma or whatever that he has just disappeared like this. But I've never heard of something like that, so I thought I would share this with some of you. Maybe you people know of that. All I can say is, hey Cookie, hey man, when are we going to see you again? I salute you anyway. Goodbye, my friend.